Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. It is a Wednesday edition of the show. We are in prime time at 7 o'clock. Kicking things off with a very special evening because the Bucs got busy today. They were a little on the quiet side yesterday outside of the trade for Shaq Mason. Today, business got done, ladies and gentlemen, and Bucs fans across the globe got to be very happy right now because they re-signed Lavonte David. They re-signed Anthony Nelson, and they found another quarterback, one that we've been talking about a lot this week. Tampa Baker Mayfield is coming to the Bucs, and there will be an open QB competition. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at PewterReport.com, Scott Reynolds. Scott, what a huge day for the Bucs.
Yeah, it really was. It started off, just with kind of like the avalanche, if you will, with Baker Mayfield signing. You had Anthony Nelson, squeezed in there like some lettuce on a sandwich that was finished off by Lavonte David. So it was quite a day today for the Buccaneers. Just really an incredible 48 hours, if you will, for the Buccaneers in terms of re-signing. Well, I guess 72 in re-signing Jamel Dean and Lavonte David. Really, when you looked at Pewter Report's board here, the top two guys, not just in Tampa Bay in terms of their free agency, but two of the best free agents in the entire class league wide. And so for the Buccaneers to get Jamel Dean back for $13 million a year, which was less than they paid Carlton Davis. And then to get Lavonte David back for 1 year, $7 million. And then you see the Baker Mayfield signing 1 year, $4 million. You have Anthony Nelson back, who is a really good situational pass rusher in reserve, making, I think it's closer to 10 million really. So it's about $5 million per year on average. I mean, that's a steal. And then you have Jamel Dean, like we talked about, Aaron Stinney coming back to help provide some competition at guard. Matt, things have gone about as well as they possibly could have for the Buccaneers. Credit to Jason Licht, Mike Greenberg, the Bucs capologist. It's just incredible what this team has been able to do in free agency with such few resources. I remember talking to Josh Capo, and Josh was convinced Lavonte David was going to get over $12 million. And I didn't think it was going to be that robust of a market for a 33-year-old linebacker. I thought, 10 would kind of be that delineation line, and it'd be great if they could get him back for less than 10. If you would have told me, Matt, that the number would be 7 for Lavonte David, I would be over the moon, and I am.
Without question. Like you said, Jason Licht and Mike Greenberg and the rest of the Bucs front office deserve a ton of credit for what they're doing because, they can't play a poker face or anything like that. Everyone knew what Tampa Bay was going into during free agency. That was not a lot of money, still needing to find a quarterback, and a lot of holes, a lot of people missing or going into free agency. So, let's start off with Lavonte David. 1 year deal, $7 million. You look at PFF and they were projecting around $12 million, like Josh Capo was talking about, or at least double digits. I thought Lavonte David was going to get that much. So the fact that they got him for $7 million, they get their dynamic duo back at linebacker. I know Devin White has fallen off a little bit, but to get Lavonte David back, this is so important. Like that kind of was. It was Jamel Dean, Lavonte David, the top two guys on defense. So that man right there, Mike Greenberg. I don't know how we got it done. We got to give a shout out to former Pewter reporter Taylor Jenkins, who he had the meme of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen with Jason Licht and Mike Greenberg's faces photoshopped onto it. So just a fantastic job. I know that was the last move of the day, but for Bucs fans, I think that's most important. Obviously, Lavonte David has a special place in the hearts of Bucs fans all over the globe. So, shout out to Lavonte being back.
Yeah, and shout out to J.C. Allen for joining us as well. Let's get your thoughts on the news here. The Jamel Dean signing obviously happened a couple of days ago, but when you look at Lavonte David and what he means to this team, not just from a sentimental Bucks legend perspective, but Buck fans want him back just because he's that familiar face they've come to love. But I mean, what he does for this defense, JC.
Yeah, I think when you look at what the Bucks have done as a whole has just been really fantastic. The way they came into this, over $60 million, almost $60 million negative cap. They had to restructure contracts, release guys, make some tough decisions just to get cap compliant. And not only do they get cap compliant, they do so in a way that none of us thought. They get there, and then they make these big moves. They make the move for Jamel Dean to bring him in and bring him back as a sizable contract, but still a great deal for the team. That's a team-friendly deal if I've ever seen one. Aaron Stinney comes back. He's playing on the veteran minimum, got a contract with incentives where he can hit up to 2.5. It's another solid deal. You know what you have in Stinney. He might not be a starter, but at least you have a quality backup in him. And for the veterans minimum, you can't say no to that. Then they bring Anthony Nelson back, a little bit more money than I think I would have liked them to spend, but still, he's another guy. You know what you're getting. He's steady Eddie. He's not going to wow you with his pressures, but he'll make a playmaking play here or two, and he'll be solid in both run support and containing rushers on trying to get out of the pocket. He's just kind of an all-around backup player. So, great move there. And then Baker Mayfield, I think we all kind of thought there was down to really two guys, regardless of what our battle plan. Shout out to Matty, the only one who got the battle plan quarterback right with Baker Mayfield. It's a great pickup. It's a high, low risk, high reward type deal. Who knows what else other moves they make if it's a Drew Lock or if it's an undrafted free agent or draft pick. But great, solid move by them too to bring in a guy who's got over 60 starts, has had some ups and downs, and really low points and really high points in his career, and will come in and compete for that starting job with Trask. Plus, he's got experience in McVay's system, which part of Canales' system is going to have aspects of that as well. So he's kind of got a little head start over Trask in some of the offense and maybe some of the terminology. And then Lavonte David. Wow, you said it. You took the words right from me. $7 million. That's just an incredible number to have him back at. I was there at that 12, 13, $14 million. I thought the Dolphins would be very aggressive on him as kind of one of the last pieces to that defense. But the linebacker market, besides Tremaine Edmonds, has really been a soft market. And when you look at what some of these other guys got, you knew the number would be less. I think, Scott, we were talking like 9.5, but to get him for 7 as the leader of your defense is just an unreal number. And hats off go to Mike Greenberg and Jason Licht and Jackie Davidson. Again, they just work magic somehow. They're not hindering themselves too much in the future with void years and pushing money out where they won't be able to make some moves next year with the cap. And the Shaq Mason trade too. I mean, you dropped like 10 picks from what you had last year, and you get a great season of value from him, and you lose one of your 2 sevenths. Not a big deal. So great job by them.
We got a super chat from Salty Buccaneer. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. They say, when Edmonds got under $10 million a year, I knew we had an honest shot to get Lavonte David back. Let's shore up the DB room now and bring back Neil, Ryan, and or Edwards. I think we're all in agreement Logan Ryan should be the first guy on the list out of those DBs that should be back for the Bucs. But to that point, the fact that they were able to get Lavonte David for so much less than I think all of us expected, I believe that makes it not great, but somewhat okay that we're not all in love with the fact that, Anthony Nelson got the deal that he got. It's good that Anthony Nelson is back, but I think we're kind of all in the same area of maybe it was a little bit too much, but you can kind of overpay in that situation because you got Lavonte under cost, because you got Jamel Dean under cost. And that helps out with Anthony Nelson, man, because we don't know what's going to go on with Shaq Barrett. I'll be totally honest. I have no expectations.
I think that's the big thing.
Anthony Nelson could end up being the starter, like at the beginning of next season. And JTS has been very up and down. Anthony Nelson, 10.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Led outside linebackers with 5.5 sacks last year. That was tied for second on the team with Devin White, and he led the team in forced fumbles. We talked about it. The Bucs have to get after the ball a lot more, mostly with interceptions, but they got to get those strip sacks as well. And Anthony Nelson was the one who was doing it the most.
Almost an interception that got called back, and he wasn't a liability. He wasn't a liability in the run game. Wasn't a liability in coverage. Would he like to have some plays back? Did he make some plays? Absolutely. But you're right. If Shaq's not there, at least they know what they have in Nelson. If they need to rely on a starter. Now, maybe they go draft somebody. Maybe they bring in another veteran other than Carl Nassib. Those are still options on the table. But you know what you have in a starter. He knows the system. You trust him. 5.5 is a little steep for me, but when you save that money, like you said, Matt, on those other two guys, why not? Reward the guy for good play.
And the thing is, if you listen to Todd Bowles in his very last Total Access with Todd Bowles show of the year, this was after the loss to the Cowboys in the playoff game. Casey Phillips from the Buccaneers radio network and Buccaneers.com asked Todd Bowles, who was the most improved player on the team? And he said 2 names. And the names he said were Anthony Nelson and Jamel Dean. And he got both of them back. And so for Todd Bowles, these were 2 guys that were really instrumental. And I think what it does is we all know that they're going to draft an edge rusher this year. You have to, just to be on the safe side in case Shaq Barrett doesn't come back fully, just in case Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is nothing more than a 4-sack guy, more of an athlete than he is a football player, so to speak. So that they've got to safeguard themselves for the future there. And plus Shaq's 30 as well. But
can never have too many.
You can never have too many pass rushers. You're right. And I just think that if Shaq Barrett had been healthy all year, even if he'd been like an 8-sack guy, even if it'd been like a little disappointing, not get double digits, even if he'd been an 8-sack guy, I don't know that they feel the need to bring back Anthony Nelson. But given Shaq's injury and how JTS just kind of has flattened out at that 4-sack number, the pressures were there a little bit more this year, but I think that honestly was a production of just more snaps. So I think that's the reason why Nelson's back, and I don't hate the move. I bring him back and let him compete and let the chips fall where they may.
And to your point, Scott, I think as you said about that, this still will have the Bucs, draft an edge rusher depending on what round. It remains to be seen. But what I like about it with the signing of Nelson and that is that it opens it up for they can really draft any different type of pass rush. We kind of felt after going to the combine that they were going to stay away from like the taller, lanky, long arm type of guys. Because you know what? Anthony Nelson is kind of that. So when you already have that type of player there, you can go for maybe a speedster or a guy that's a little more physical. JTS kind of fills into that guy who's built like a statue type of player that maybe they don't necessarily have to go after that now. Maybe you go after a guy who's a little bit quicker, maybe not necessarily like a Cam Gill style, but a little bit bigger there, maybe a little more polished with the pass rushing moves. It opens the door for really any truly legitimately any type of like pass rusher that the Bucs fall in love with in this draft class. They don't have to pigeonhole themselves into a specific type of guy.
Yeah. Well, and also too, the guys that they spoke with at the combine were not Lucas Van Ness. They were not they were not the big kid from Michigan.
The smaller guys, the Derek Halls and the Nolan Smiths.
Yeah, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Will McDonald. Those were the more honestly of the Shaq Barrett type speed edge rusher types rather than the big, more physical types. And you know what? I agree. Eliam Hastanon. I would love to see Felix Anudike-Uzomah here. And I would say that I would say that even if he was a Kansas Jayhawk, to be honest, he's just that good of a player. He's got some real bend to his game. And trust me, I do not speak very highly of Jayhawks at all. So for me to even utter those words, especially in March Madness time, it's almost like blasphemy. But seriously, Felix Anudike-Uzomah can play. And trust me, if you put on a Will McDonald highlight tape from Iowa State, he got a bunch of sacks against Kansas State. I got all the respect in the world for that guy. He can get the job done. He's got long arms. He's another speed guy. And so those guys, as you mentioned, Derek Hall from Auburn, Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. Those are some of the edge rushers that they're going to get. And, we'll see if they bring back Carl Nassib too. I almost thought yesterday, guys, I want to get your take on this. When Nacho left to go to the Giants, and we talked about that really was a a blow to the coaching staff. They really wanted Nacho back in a big way just because of the energy that he brings to the defense, practice on game days and all that. He brings the juice, and you have to wonder now if there's a little bit more of an impetus to bring back Carl Nassib, even just to compete for depth in training camp on a 1-year prove-it deal. He's 30 years old. He's well past the big contracts.
Yeah.
But Nassib's one of those guys that just brings the juice as well. He's that fire starter in practice and on game day. So I'd love to see Carl Nassib come back, even though they signed Anthony Nelson, and even though they're probably going to draft an edge rusher early in the draft.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Carl Nassib. The only thing that concerns me, it's not really specifically Carl, it's the outside linebacker room as a whole. I mean, Todd Bowles spoke about the fact that they needed to get more production from their outside linebackers. And sure, Shaq Barrett being injured is a big part of it. But if you got that lack of production, are the Bucs really that confident that, Anthony Nelson's going to take the next step and JTS trajects in the proper way that they all want him to? Because if it's like, all right, we didn't love what we got from the outside linebackers, let's just bring everybody back and hope they do better. I don't necessarily love that strategy. Now, if you
not a good process, you're right,
linebacker, if you draft another edge rusher, then sure, it adds another one into the mix, and maybe it motivates all the other guys around him. I love Carl Nassib. I agree with everything about the energy and pumping everybody up. It's just a little bit odd to me if you had a room that struggled across the board for the most part, with the exception of Anthony Nelson, to all of a sudden bring everybody back and be like, all right, we're good. We did our job in free agency. Yeah,
I guess it really depends on where they draft the outside linebacker, the edge guy, right? If they draft one in the first, second, third round, then that this is a guy who's going to see playing time. He's not a developmental project. He's a guy that they want to step away and contribute somehow. So if that's the case, and then you want to have 5 guys and you bring Nassib back, I'm totally fine with that. I had Nassib on my battle plan at Anthony getting more money elsewhere. So I only had one of them coming back. I see what you're saying, Matt. Like the redundancy, if you don't invest in it with a higher draft pick, a guy that can, play that second or third role, depending on if Shaq's ready to go week 1, then it doesn't make much sense to just bring them back and bring like a 6th rounder in to compete. It's one of those things that's you kind of wait and see what they do, what else they have up their sleeve. Because right now, I mean, they could surprise us with anything, guys. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, they're finding ways to do it.
Yeah, really, anything is on the table. But, we've had all this discussion about juice and energy and things like that. So, of course, we got to talk about the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast, Celsius Energy Drinks. Make sure you check out their new flavors. The Fantasy Vibe, it's like drinking an orange creamsicle, which is absolutely awesome. Bucs fans love creamsicle. We saw a comment before that said, I want to see Lavonte David in a creamsicle jersey. I want to get that jersey. Well, you have the opportunity this year. Also, shout out to the sparkling lemon lime, a fantastic flavor. Huge fan of that. Quickly went into the ranks of my top 5 drinks. 7 essential vitamins, no crash, no post-energy drink jitters that you get with other products. If you want to find out where to get some, punch in your address on the Celsius store locator. It works perfectly. It was fantastic. We used it when we were at the Combine in Indianapolis, went to our local convenience store, or as I like to say, your bodega. So go to your nearest bodega, get a Celsius energy drink. If you want to get them in bulk, get the variety pack. It is bodega season. It is always bodega season. If you want to get it in bulk, though, go to Celsius. Go to Celsius. Well, you're going to order Celsius. Go to Amazon. Click on the subscribe and save. Have Celsius sent to your house or apartment every month, quarterly, yearly, if you want to. Do the subscribe and save on Amazon. Get the variety pack, because variety is the spice of life. And just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official sponsor of the Pewter Report podcast. We got a super chat that I wanted to get to, because if you super chat us, you get to cut the line. We are the bouncers, and you are now the VIP. So let's give a shout out to LDBC's Most Wanted. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. They say, Light said, screw a rebuild. This is a reload. All we need is another Jason Light 2018 caliber draft, and we got the South under wraps. Shout out PR. Shout out to Pewter Report and the Pewter Report podcast.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a lot, Scott, about that. The Bucs need to hit some home runs this year when it comes to the draft. So, yeah, there is still a lot of pressure for as great of a job Jason Licht has done early on in free agency. The book is not closed by any means, and a lot of this will be determined with how the Bucs navigate the draft coming up at the end of April. So, does it have to be as good as the 2018 class? I'm not exactly sure. I think the competition isn't as difficult, really. The Falcons are making a lot of signings, the Panthers too, but, we've seen in the past teams can make big signings and they can make the postseason, but they're not always like a Super Bowl contender. And as we talked about on yesterday's show, the New Orleans Saints are getting ripped to shreds.
They really are, yeah.
Day by day, hour by hour. So, JC, just your thoughts about Jason Licht. I mean, we already praised him, but just navigating this NFC South and this draft, he's not on the hot seat at all, Jason Licht. But is this a must need in this year's draft to at least get 3 or 4 starters out of it?
Well, you look at the landscape of the NFC. The Saints has defenses got entirely shredded. You got a new coaching staff, potentially a first-round draft pick, starting his games out there, unless they go with Andy Dalton with the Panthers and the Heineke Ritter connection down there in Atlanta. Teams are still stocking up. The Panthers just brought in Miles Sanders. Jamal Williams just went to the Saints. So it's how does Licht volley these moves? How does he say, okay, this is where you guys are going? Not necessarily how do I build a team that can beat your team, but how do I stay relevant? How do I keep our team the team to beat in the NFC South?
Yeah.
And that's going to be with some more of these value signings, which was what he talked about at the Combine, value signings, which he's gotten for his own players. I mean, that's not counting other potential teams that might want to players that want to come play for this team. But the draft, you're absolutely right. He doesn't have to, I think, have a perfect draft, but it needs to be something like that 2020 draft. It needs to be 2 guys come in and they're immediate starters and they make impact plays for this team. I think.
I almost have to take it to the 2018 draft as the previous post said. In that draft, he got 4 starters, right? And there wasn't that immediate impact guy like Tristan Wirfs, who just all of a sudden Pro Bowl caliber from day one. In Winfield, looked like an absolute ace and a surefire Pro Bowler during his rookie season. I think it's got to be like the 2020 draft and the 2018 draft combined. Where if you go back to that 2018 draft, you had Vita Vea. Now there are a couple misses, right? We could say what we want about Rojo. He helped out during the Super Bowl year. He's no longer on a team right now. But really, if you look back at that draft a couple years after it happened, Vita Vea, Carlton Davis, Alex Kappa in the 3rd round, Jordan Whitehead in the 4th round. Those are 4 big-time quality starters, 2 of which got mega deals re-signed here in Tampa. The other 2 got rich deals outside of Tampa, Kappa with the Bengals, and then obviously Whitehead with the Jets. But to your point, JC, I agree with you. This is the year where they got to get 4 or 5 starters in this draft class, and 2 of them have got to be impact players. Guys that boom, home run right out of the gate, not just a single or a double. Jason Light's kind of done that a little bit, right? Camarda, okay, that's a double. Otten, okay, that's a single or a double. Rashad White, okay, that's a single or a double. Hopefully these guys turn into triples and maybe walk around home runs. But this is the year. This draft has got to be mega, mega, mega good, and he's got to have some of those other guys, right? Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, Logan Hall, Kyle Trask. These guys have got to rise up and show that they're not wasted picks.
Absolutely. And I think you can get one of those guys. I mean, you look at Pewter Report's darling Brian Branch has been all over our mocks because I think he's one of those guys who can step in and he's going to be a starter. He's going to be a quality starter and he gives a versatile piece. And then you got to come back in the 2nd round and you got to hit on something else. So that's going to be a rotational edge guy who's going to give you 6 sacks this season and be an impact player, whether that's an offensive lineman, maybe you throw a guard or a tackle in that competition there, whether it's another position, tight end in a very deep tight end rich draft. I don't think they should go there, or defensive tackle. That whoever they bring in has to be a guy that can come in and deliver above average snaps to this team. And then the rest of the guys, they got to find rotational roles until they can grow into starters, just like that 2018 class did.
Yeah, that's what I was curious to get your guys' thoughts about, because they have to pinpoint the certain positions where they can get those like instant starters or instant impact players. And signing Jamel Dean kind of takes corner off the board because they don't
Right.
need to find like a right away starter there.
Unless
I
it's
think,
a slot
I
corner.
think safety, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like a nickel corner, which again, the Brian Branch system, or they
Right.
go with another safety that can also play the nickel, whether it's Jamie Robinson. I think JC, you had him in your Bucs battle
Yes.
plan. I had mentioned Sidney Brown as well, a couple of guys that play safety but can also play in the slot. So I really think like safety is one of those positions. Obviously, left tackle, depending on what they decide to do there, if they move Tristan or if and draft the right tackle, or they decide to draft the left tackle, that's obviously a glaring one right there. And then defense tackle is interesting as well, with only Vita and Logan Hall on the defensive line. We've always, or Scott, you said a lot, and others have said that, defensive tackle is like one of the toughest positions for players to like come in right away and make an impact, because you have to get bigger and you're learning the game at such a rapid pace, almost as much as like a quarterback or a defensive back. So I don't know. Those are like the first three that popped into my head. Obviously, tight end, you have Kate Otten there, but I'm curious if those are like the main ones for finding instant home runs right away.
Yeah, and you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they can hit on the right edge rusher, right? I mean, Will McDonald, it's not unreal to have a guy come in, even if JTS is going to start, even if you've got Shaq Barrett who comes back and is healthy enough to go and all of that. We've seen Anthony Nelson pile up some sacks, right, in a reserve role. And if you've got a guy that's better, faster, is more of like one of those just speed rushers off the edge, whether it's Will McDonald from Iowa State, Felix Anudike-Ozama from Kansas State. I've seen it happen before, where you get a guy that comes in fresh and he's the pass rush specialist, and he ends up getting 6, 7, 8 sacks, and is not a full-time player and gets just as many sacks as the starters do. So I wouldn't rule that out either.
I think like Charles Amanu, who however you say his last name, he had 54 pressures, only playing 50% of the snaps and 5.5 sacks. If you get a guy that can give you that as a rookie, you got to love that. Like that's perfect. And those guys you outlined, those guys would be perfect in that role. I think having a third pass rusher, just because he's not a starter, it's become more important in the NFL.
It really is.
Starting to see other teams do it. It's almost like having a nickel cornerback, having that third pass rusher, especially when you have a guy who's got flexibility, who can kick it on the inside and pass rushing. So defense essentially gives you all three of your guys in different looks and with the way Bulls can move guys around and design exotic looks, it just gives you that much to play with. And I think that corner safety is such a hard thing because the Bucs have to make a decision, and Bulls talked about that. Antoine Winfield has got to play a position. Is that free safety or is that nickel?
It's going to be free safety. He's free safety. He's not going to be playing nickel.
Right, exactly.
That experiment was over.
So then when you have him playing free safety, now you have two spots right now that are unfilled on this team, and that's strong safety and nickel cornerback. So the Bucs need two of those guys, and I would think that they would need two of those guys either higher in the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them go, even if they took Brian Branch, to take Jamie Robinson in the third round and have back-to-back. Jason Licht loves to double up as it is. But they need two of those guys to come in and make an impact. They could re-sign Logan Ryan, and I think a lot of us think they might do that.
He's been tweeting a ton about the Bucs. He was very happy for,
but is he a starter, though?
For Jamel Dean and for Lavonte David. I think he's a starter, next to Antoine Winfield Jr. If they go the route of drafting a safety and making them the nickel corner. I absolutely think Logan Ryan's a starter. He was an impact player early on in the season before he got hurt. So
let's get to the super chat here from Bucs Basement. We appreciate that $5 super chat. Happy we got Lavonte and Dean back. Baker makes the Bucs watchable. We overpaid for Nelson. Yeah, I think that's all fair to say. And I agree with that. Yeah.
Let's get into Baker Mayfield. We kind of buried the lead. Well, Lavonte was the lead, but Baker Mayfield was the early morning lead. We didn't get too much into Baker Mayfield just yet. As Greg says, does the Baker means that Blaine train is toast? Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, it looks like it's the
some other team will enjoy a hero. It won't be Tampa Bay, but
There goes my hero.
Watch Blaine
him
as
as he
he
goes.
goes.
Oh, Matt, I
Driving
didn't even
off
say
on the jet
congratulations to
ski.
you, Matt.
Driving up on the jet ski.
Oh, Blaine. He will always have a special spot in Tampa. He also just golfed recently. The Valspar Championship is coming up. That's in
Wirfs was his caddy, I
Harbor.
think.
Yeah, Tristan Wirfs was his caddy. Coke Keefe was a caddy as well. But let's get back in.
Yeah.
Let's get back to Baker Mayfield. That was the big news this morning. Signed a 1-year deal, $4 million, can get up to $8.5 million if all those incentives hit. And I've seen mixed reactions from Bucs fans in general, and I totally understand. I mean, we had differences of opinions when it came to Baker versus Jacoby Brissett, and Brissett is now with the Washington Commodes, so no longer an option for the Buccaneers.
Matt, well said.
I understand the worries about Baker. Like, okay, he started falling off. He played through the torn labrum injury. Clearly couldn't make it in Carolina. He had the big moment with the Rams, but like it was that moment and then kind of snapped back to reality. So as Ed says with this comment, how will Dave Canales change Mayfield? Well, the one thing is he's going to make Baker like the point guard. That's his big thing, is that he's going to make whoever the quarterback is, they're just going to dish the ball. And he's big on the QB waggles, which is why the mobility of Baker Mayfield, while again, he's not Jalen Hurts or anybody like that, he can move around. For me personally, I just like the fact that Baker, he's going to sling the rock. I understand it'll get him into trouble sometimes, but he's going to push the ball down the field. And if Dave Canales can harness it in the right way, like he did with Geno Smith, he's got a lot of talent around him, arguably the most talent that Baker Mayfield has ever played with in his career. And I'm not anointing hhim the starting job. Kyle Trask could very much win this opportunity. But I like the attitude that he's going to bring. I said before, it's the attitude era in Tampa with Baker Mayfield getting here. I like that he's going to come in with the screw you and F you type of attitude. I think, the way things went last year for the Bucs, they kind of need that. They kind of need, that swift kick from the behind to get things going for this season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And when you look at Mayfield, he's going to have the opportunity to really get his career back on track. You only get so many swings at the plate, and I hate baseball, but I'm going to use that analogy.
I know you hate baseball. You've been using. I know
it's such a good analogy. I mean, you could say you only get so many swings at the ball if you're a kicker, but it just sounds better when it's bad.
You're right.
But
it's true.
But so here's a guy that Cleveland, Carolina, LA, Tampa Bay, right? There's 4 stops within the span of 1 year, essentially. Right. And if it doesn't happen here, then he is a Jameis Winston, right? He's just a career backup. He's a Jacoby Brissett, although Brissett might win that job up in Washington. But his status just drops. You only have so much, capital with that. Hey, I was the number 1 overall pick. We saw that worked out for Jameis Winston, not too well. So I think that he's going to certainly give it his best shot. He's got all the motivation to double his salary essentially if he hits on some of those incentives. I think he comes here thinking that, hey, all I have to do is beat out an inexperienced guy that couldn't even beat out Blaine Gabbert for the number 2 next year. I don't think he's scared of that. I don't think Baker Mayfield's scared of anything, really. I like the swagger that he brings. But the biggest thing is, and it goes back to Ed's point, how is Dave Canales going to change Baker Mayfield? The one thing he has to do, coach the interceptions out of Baker Mayfield. Know when to give up on a play, be a little bit more conservative, rely on this Todd Bowles defense and running game to help you out. And if he can do that, if he can harness those interceptions, which is something Jameis Winston couldn't do, then you might have something here in Baker Mayfield. If Baker goes back into being that kind of sensational guy that is not afraid of any throw, it's going to result in some spectacular plays. It's going to result in some spectacular interceptions. And we saw that with Jameis Winston, 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions in his final year in Tampa. I don't know if Baker's going to get those numbers, but that's the big thing. He's just got to be less turnover prone. First rule of football, don't beat yourself.
Right. That was huge point of emphasis too, is protecting the football. Turnovers, fumbles. That's something that they do not want from their quarterbacks. As Matt said, they want them to be that point guard, that game manager, that guy who can not only sometimes elevate his team to win, but be a part of the reason why they're winning, because of his distribution skills. And Baker's got to work on that. But I think he's also had 3 head coaches in his career, with the Browns, and then he moved to. I never thought Carolina was the great fit for him.
I agree.
I feel
Yep.
like it was just the only team that would trade something for him
Yeah.
at that had a need. You saw when he went to Sean McVay's offense in the Rams, you saw that little spark, and especially in that one game. And I mean, you look at what he was dealing with there. Cooper Kupp was out. Allen Robinson was useless. Van Jefferson was banged up. The offensive line was decimated, and he still finished throwing 800 yards on the season in just 5 games, essentially 4.5 games, essentially. So I think with what Canales is bringing, part of that system in here, we got a brief look at it. Like I said, he's already kind of got an upper hand to Trask, so to speak, because he might know some of the terminology and some of the things that they're going to run once he sees it. It might be called something different, but he's like, oh yeah, we ran this last year with the Rams. I know this one. So like, I think that gives him an upper hand. It's still going to be, I think, a good competition. With that salary, only $4 million, I think they're saying you need to earn this. And I think Baker's going to come in here. I think he's going to still have that swagger, that attitude, that presence, but I think it's going to be a more humbled presence because, Scott, you said it. If he doesn't right the ship this year, forget about the money, forget about the next team. He's in a Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota no man's land. That's where right. He is nothing but a backup going forward.
That's right.
Yeah, Baker can't come in and start demanding anything. He hasn't even earned, the number 1 QB job. And
I heard he had Jarvis Landry on his wish list.
I think it's good to, yeah. He's not pulling the. Aaron Rodgers can pull that. Baker Mayfield cannot. But I think what's important to point out is, his best season was probably 2020 when the Browns made the playoffs for the first time in almost a decade, and they beat the Steelers in the first round and then lost to the Chiefs, who went on to lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. But that season, Baker threw for 3,563 yards. He had 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And then that next year when he played injured, still threw for 3,000 yards, had 17 touchdowns, but the interceptions went up to 13. So, yeah, it's all about limiting those interceptions. And, you see the number, 3,563. It's not like insane. It's not like Tom Brady breaking the Bucs passing records and things like that. But let's remember, the Browns were always predicated off of a great running game with Nick Chubb. And that's what Tampa Bay is looking for, is to reinvigorate the run game with Rachaad White as running back 1. Potentially, there are some conversations had on social media about Ezekiel Elliott.
He's not coming to Tampa, by the way.
He's not coming to Tampa, so we have it official. Zeke is not coming.
That's just speculation. That's not. There's no. Just because Skip Pete coached Zeke last year doesn't mean Skip Pete wants Zeke in Tampa. I'm not saying he doesn't or does, but it's not an automatic. Just because the position coach coached him last year in his previous stop, that he's automatically going to come. Just like Rashad Penny didn't come to Tampa with Dave Canales. I don't know if Drew Lock is going to come here as the number 3 quarterback.
Travis Homer didn't even come here. We could have potentially been the number 2. And I like that.
I just think it would be. It wouldn't do anybody any favors, specifically Rachaad White. Like, you just released Leonard Fournette, who was the veteran guy who got the snaps partially because he was the veteran in the room. You bring in Zeke, and you're going to have to give him the ball a little bit. It's like, why do that when you have Rachaad
That's not
White?
The plan. You're right.
That's not the plan.
This is not the last 3 years where you're bringing any all-pro, Pro Bowl player.
You're rewinding the tape, essentially. You got to move forward. Why not have Rachaad White be the guy, even though he's younger, and then bring it, and you still have Keyshawn Vaughn on the roster. Bring in a 6th, 7th round pick at running back.
I would not be surprised if they go, just like you said, Matt, if they go with the day 3 running back, and then they have an undrafted free agent, and there's your 4. And the reason I say that is Rachaad White.
He's going into his 2nd year. Like, he's the guy. Let him be the guy.
Here's 3 things about the Bucs running back situation and why I think they're going to go really, really young. Number 1, they have a very, very, very old and experienced running backs coach in Skip Pete. He has been there and done that with the likes of Charlie Garner, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott,
Tony
Tony
Pollard.
Pollard. The list goes on and on. He is the experienced guy in the room. You don't need a veteran. Number two, you have Rachaad White, and just like you said, Matt, you're spot on. You want to give him as many opportunities as you can because he might be the future at the position. Let him succeed or fail. You also have Keyshawn Vaughn, who is entering year 4 now, a contract year, and give him some shots at the number 2 spot. But perhaps the most important thing is Rachaad White. He is the most mature rookie.
Yeah.
We all experienced that in training camp. When we did the training camp diary with this guy, we're like, you're supposed to be the rookie. Right. We do like one with the rookie, one with the veteran. You're sounding like the veteran, even though this is your first go around here.
Right.
He's mature beyond his years. And I think that is going to help him immensely step into the starting number 1 running back role.
For me, the only reason I think they would bring a veteran in, not for experience, not to lean on, but a veteran guy who plays special teams. Because you never know what you're going to get out of an undrafted guy on special teams. They're going to work hard, but are they going to be good at it? And I think if they had a chance to get a veteran guy who's had a couple snaps here and there, but is a really good special teams addition, whether that he handles kickoffs or returns, or whether he's just a solid special teams tackler. That's the only way I think they'll, really look at it.
This is a deep running back draft too.
Yeah.
So there's going to
double up there.
Yeah.
They did it 4 years ago with Vaughn.
Wanted to give a quick shout out. Matthew had the super chat up. He said that the NFC South is going to be a dogfight this year. I agree. It might
not
be
a good one.
Yeah, not a good one. I believe
it was last year, right?
Yeah, it was.
It came down to the last game and essentially the Panthers game, but I mean, the Buccaneers only had a 1-game lead on the other teams, and it was kind of a dogfight the whole way. It's going to be interesting to see when after free agency is over and after the draft is over, what the odds are for the Super Bowl teams and how the NFC South looks. But I'm just telling you right now, folks, don't wait until then to look at the odds. You got March Madness around the corner, man. Yes. It starts tomorrow, right?
Cannot wait. 12:15.
March Madness has officially begun. It's time for you to shoot your shot and score big on the nonstop action with MyBookie. Whether you're filling out multiple brackets, betting on the eventual national champion, or you're simply looking for player and game props, MyBookie has you covered. Getting started with MyBookie is simple. Visit the website online, make your first deposit, use the promo code Pewter to claim an exclusive deposit bonus. That's promo code Pewter to claim some extra money on top of your initial deposit. With hundreds of thousands in prizes for March Madness and weekly blackjack tournaments, you can turn your game day into payday with MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Guys, this is the best time to join MyBookie.
It is.
You've got so much going on. Baseball's, around the corner. You've got NHL. You got March Madness. You have UFC fights. And here's the great thing too: when you're a MyBookie client, MyBookie every once in a while will just give you free money. I just got a $20 free play to bet on March Madness games, and I did that. So yes, I put some money on my Kansas State Wildcats. I also put some money on Marquette. I put some money on Texas.
Nice.
Spread it around a little bit. But that's the beauty is you will get, and usually it starts with football season. They'll give you a $20 free play. They'll give you a $20 free play for hockey, baseball. It's just great. So there's no other place like MyBookie. Make sure that you sign up using promo code Pewter.
Scott, a cool thing is if Kansas State can get to the Sweet 16, they will play at Madison Square Garden in New York City. So they will be going to the original Manhattan, a little bit bigger, the bigger Manhattan.
The Little Apple goes to the Big Apple.
Yeah, the Little Apple goes to the Big Apple. So that would be really cool.
And actually, speaking of that, just a comment here from Flash Gordon. I like the Kansas State guy. It's Felix Anudike Uzama, but I like Yaya as well. And there's another Louisville guy. That's Yaya Diaby. That's a player that we all like, and he's definitely in the mix. What I like about Yaya Diaby is he's not just your classic edge rusher. Look at this dude. He's got some size. Yeah. He's about 270 pounds, 6'3", 270, ran a 4.56. So when you look at the likes of Felix Anudike Uzama, this guy's about 10, 15 pounds heavier. And Will McDonald checked in at 238, I think, or 239 at the combine. This guy's got about 25 pounds on McDonald. So Yaya Diaby is a player to keep an eye on for the Buccaneers. One of the other guys that Todd Bowles and Jason Licht met with formally at the Combine.
Yes, it is. A lot of different options for the Bucs. So it'll be interesting to see what way they go. Be very fun to see where they decide in free agency next, because that will help us pick up some more context clues of where they might target early in the draft, where they might not target anymore. I see some people, talking about Licht on day 3, pair him with Keith and have a poor man's upper Midwest Rhino backfield. Talking about Hunter Licht out of North Dakota
State.
Yeah, North
Bison,
Dakota State.
That would be like bringing the L train. He's almost like Mike Allstott. I'm not going to say he is Mike Allstott. He's like a poor man's Mike Allstott. But he wouldn't be the A train. He'd be the L train in Tampa for sure.
You know what? You can sell me on it, because the Bucs struggled so badly in short yardage situation that they need a guy to get the short yardage.
I know.
So, and Keith isn't really a runner. I know he lines up in the backfield, but he's not really accustomed to taking handoffs. So you can sell me on it. Right now, I would say no, but I could be convinced.
Yep, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see where they go in free agency. We'll take a quick look again at what they've done and some of the players left on our board, not necessarily the Bucs board in this order, but so far so great for the Bucs. I think given their limited resources, Jamel Dean, Lavonte David. In between, you got Baker Mayfield, Stinney, and Nelson, right? And then these are some names that we've talked about on the show, and a couple of others. Will Golston, Akeem Hicks. I'm not sure if he comes back or not, but if some of these guys like Golston and Hicks come back literally for the league minimum, sure, bring them on, because you need some bodies up front. You can't just draft some defensive tackles and expect them to come in right away and make an impact. Defensive tackle is one of the hardest spots to come in and just find immediate success. We rattled off, the names before. The greatest Buccaneer defensive tackles, right? Warren Sapp, 3 sacks as a rookie. Gerald McCoy, 3 sacks as a rookie. You had Vita Vea, 3 sacks as a rookie, right? All those guys are Pro Bowlers. Santana Dotson's the only guy drafted, I think, in the 5th round out of Baylor back in, 91, 92? He had 10 sacks as a rookie. Still the leading sacker for the Buccaneers as a rookie. And you know what? Never got that number again, even though he went on to find more success in Green Bay and won a Super Bowl with the Packers with Brett Favre. Never even got close to 10 sacks. But it's hard. It's a hard position to come in. This is not a good defensive tackle draft. We all
feel like we've said that the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's a hard position to fill, and so I'm not opposed to bringing Will Golston or Akeem Hicks back, just as bodies really to help give Vita Vea a breather, and also Logan Hall. He's got to really beef up this year and step up.
What do you think the number is for Mike Edwards?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. We talked about this yesterday.
Do you think there's a number where, just looking at the safety class and who's signed and who hasn't, other than obviously Jesse Bates? I mean, you think it's at 4? He comes back and is like, I'll take 3 for 12. Do you think that's something the Bucs would do?
Yeah, I think they would if it's under 4. Yeah, I do. He knows the defense.
He's young.
I think he stepped up this past year. He's young. Like I said, I'm not opposed to bringing all 3 of these guys back, right? Logan Ryan, Mike Edwards, Keanu Neal, and you draft another safety or 2, and then you let them duke it out in camp, and maybe Neal's the odd man out. Maybe it's Logan Ryan if he, if he kind of shows his age a little bit, and or maybe it's Mike Edwards. You bring him back, and the rookie comes in and steals the spot.
Okay, let me.
Nothing wrong with competition.
Yeah, let me ask you guys that, because if they're able to bring back, let's say they bring back Will Golston, and you get one of the 3 safeties there between Ryan, Edwards, and Keanu Neal. So essentially, the big additions would be maybe someone on the defensive line, along with Golston, and maybe like they draft the safety. You're essentially, with the exception of a couple of new pieces, you're bringing back the same defense from last season.
Yeah.
Are you guys content with that defense, with the understanding of, all right, this is on the offense, like the offense needs to play better? So you guys are good with the production that the defense brought last year, and it's on the offense to get better?
Absolutely.
I think so. Just because that defense last year, right? They played 17 games. In 10 of those, they held opponents to 21 points or less. That's winning football in the modern day. It used to be 17 points back in the Tony Dungy 90s, right? Now with scoring at, a little bit more of a premium because the rules favor the offense in the passing game. 21 points, that's a really good marker right there. I think 21 points or less, you got a really, really good chance of winning that game. And the Buccaneers were 7-3 in those games last year. So you're going to have some shootouts, right? The Bucs defense is not going to be able to wear the superhero cape every single game, every single week. But to have more than half of your games at 21 points or less, and the Buccaneers only won 8 games last year, fellas, and 7 of those were when the defense held the opponents to 21 points or less. So yeah, if the offense does its job, and I'm telling you right now, and I don't know why I believe this. This is just some crazy faith, I guess, on my part. But I'm telling you right now, I'm assuming it's going to be Baker Mayfield over Kyle Trask for the starting job. I'm not going out on a limb there, right? But I'm telling you right now, with
I'm going to say what I think you're going to say.
With Tom Brady gone, we're going to see exactly how much Byron Leftwich is going to be exposed, because with Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich, this offense averaged 18 points per game. And I think that with Baker Mayfield, they're going to average at least 20, if not 21 points per game with Dave Canales and Baker Mayfield. And that's going to be an absolute indictment on Byron Leftwich and just how bad he was last year.
Scott, I'll take it one step further. I'll go where you didn't go. I think this team could potentially win more games than they did last year.
Yeah.
I really do. And the defense, I mean, yeah, you put it out perfectly. 10 games, 22 points or less. Well, like maybe 3 of those games, they had their entire starting roster on the field. They were hit hard early with injuries, and injuries that took guys out for weeks at a time. And they can even stay healthier, add some younger pieces to additions, and keep some of these main guys on the roster, bring back a Mike Edwards, and then, you can really – it lets you and it opens up the draft board. They could go wide receiver in the first round if they want. They could go anywhere really. And I think that's kind of what they're trying to set themselves up for, is to be able to go best player available in their mind. And that'd be perfect for the team to continue to build. And whether you're putting pieces on the offense or putting pieces early on the defense, I mean, it's only going to improve this team. I don't think, like I said, I don't think the Super Bowl is necessarily open. I think the NFC South is still the Bucs to lose. It's a little bit more open for sure, but I still think it's the Bucs to lose. And the NFC conference as a whole, it's just who's going to step up. There's no team. The Eagles just lost half their defense. There's no team in the NFC right now that says they're going to be a problem next year. The rest of the NFC, the rest of the league needs to watch out, when you can say that about 4 or 5 teams in the AFC. So it's really wide open. If they make the correct moves and bring the right guys in here, why can't we talk about the Bucs potentially being in an NFC Championship game next season?
I think that's a little lofty. I think winning the NFC South would be would be my limit right now. I wouldn't say the NFC South or NFC Championship. We'll see. Matt, let's wrap it up here with the super chat here.
Yeah, shout out to ET for the $4.99 super chat. Appreciate it. They say, where is the cap at? Lenny, Brate, suck up still on the books? Thanks, PR. Go Bucs. So that was interesting. With Lenny and Brate, we came out with the reports that they are going to be released, but they can't release them until, starting today when the new league started. So when the Bucs were getting cap compliant, they were able to get cap compliant without Brate and Fournette coming off the books just yet. Now they are coming off the books, and it clears them at least like 5 million.
Brate's around 2, Lenny's over 3, so just about 5 million for that. Suck up, from what I'm hearing, is going to stay. They're going to need him this year, right? If you're going to have a young quarterback, a new play caller, it stinks that you're not going to maybe have that range of 50 plus. But the guy's just about automatic from 47 in.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on Bowles too, Scott, because Bowles trot him out for a 55-yard field goal. And we're all sitting there like, what is he doing? He's not going to hit this. And he's like completely shaking.
4th and 3 too.
Exactly. Don't put him in that situation. If you know we can't hit, if you want to try him at 50, fine. I get it. But
he made one.
54-yarder.
Well, here's something to consider, and this is something the Buccaneers are thinking about. It's not a done deal by any means, but here's something they're thinking about. And the Falcons did this a couple years ago when when their kicker was getting up there in age. Matt, and I'm forgetting his last name. I'm showing my age
He
here.
was a former
Bryant?
Tampa Bay, Matt Bryant.
Matt Bryant, thank you. Yeah, when he was not hitting long distance kicks, they had their punter go out and try a couple of long distance kicks. Now Matt, Matt Suckup or Ryan Suckup, he had 7 field goals attempts of over 50 yards, 7 the entire year. That's not even one every other week. So, and I'm with you, Matt. Some of those kicks, like, probably shouldn't even attempted those, the 55-yarder, 57, whatever it was. But my whole thing is why don't you let Jake Camarda in training camp practice some of those kicks? Because if you're only going to trot out, if you're only going to try 5 to 7 plus 50 kicks, this guy's got a booming leg. He's your kickoff guy to begin with, right? He's got a booming leg as a punter. He's a great athlete. He's young. Why not sit there and have him be the long distance field goal specialist? To me, that makes a ton of sense.
They did
especially
that.
if it's 5 to 7 times per year.
Yeah, they did that. I forgot if it was 19, 20, or 21, but they did that with Bradley Pinion when he was the punter for the Bucs, because he also did the kickoffs. And it was at halftime, right before halftime, and they were at midfield, so it kind of made sense. But I'm with you. Like, why not? If you're going to try like a crazy 57-yarder at the end of the half, or it's a tie game at the end of the fourth quarter, it's either try this or go into overtime. I'm with you. I mean, what do you really got to lose there? And Camarda's game for it. He's clearly athletic. We saw the great play he made last year on the botch punt. Yeah, and he kicked before. He's an athlete. He's played a lot of different sports. He's talked about it. I'm with you. I'm all in for it. And if you're all in on the Bucs and you like reading Bucs content and watching it, please follow us and read pewterreport.com. Follow us on our social media at Twitter, at Pewter Report on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do the podcast there 4 times a week. We have various clips that we put up from literally anything that has to do with the Bucs, whether it's conversations we have, talking to prospects at the combine, things for the draft, things during the season. You want it, we have it on our YouTube channel. So follow us on social media. Please like and subscribe to Pewter Report TV for all of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers coverage. But that's going to do it for us on tonight's show. For JC Allen, for Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Peace out. What a day. What a day for the Bucs.
Out. Lavonte, a Buccaneer for life.